The Ohio State Prison greeted dawn as usual, with the creaking of metal doors, the harsh commands of guards, and the echo of footsteps in the concrete corridors. Ray Flores sat on the edge of his bunk in a cell in Block B, holding a folded piece of paper in his hands. The letter had arrived 3 days ago, but he had read it over and over again until the words burned a hole in his mind. "Dad, I know you don't approve of my choice, but this is my life. I make more in a week than Mom does in a month at that cafe. Please don't judge me. Your daughter, Haley." Ray crumpled the letter and threw it into the corner of the cell. 52 years of his life, and this was what he had come to. His only daughter selling herself to rich bastards in Parma, while he sat behind bars, powerless to stop the madness. "Flores, get up, breakfast!" the guard shouted, banging his baton on the metal bars. Ray slowly got up. His cellmate, Tommy, was already standing at the door, shifting impatiently from foot to foot. A small, skinny guy from Cleveland who ended up here for petty fraud. They had been in the same cell for 2 years, but had never been close friends. "You didn't sleep again last night," Tommy remarked as they walked down the hallway to the dining room. "What's eating you, old man?" Ray didn't answer. He was thinking about that night 3 years ago when he had been arrested. An armed robbery at a gas station, a stupid attempt to get some quick cash when Martha had lost her job and the bills were piling up. Haley was 25 at the time, working at a beauty salon and dating a nice guy, a teacher from the suburbs. Now, everything had changed. In the dining room, Ray took his tray and sat down at his usual table in the corner. Oatmeal, cold toast, and coffee that tasted more like dirty water. He chewed mechanically, thinking about how everything had gone wrong. "I heard your folks are coming today," Tommy said, sitting down next to him. "Will Martha be there again?" "I don't know," Ray muttered. Martha came once a month, sometimes less. Their relationship had fallen apart before he was arrested, but she still felt it was her duty to keep in touch. Haley never came. After breakfast, the prisoners went to work. Ray was assigned to the laundry, monotonous work that gave him time to think. He sorted dirty clothes, thinking about his daughter's letter. "I make more in a week than you do in a month." Those words burned inside him. At 1 o'clock, it was visiting time. Ray sat in a large hall divided in half by thick glass. Opposite him sat Martha, his ex-wife, looking tired and aged. There were gray strands in her dark hair and wrinkles around her eyes. She worked as a waitress in a cafe on the outskirts of Parma, working hard to pay for her rented apartment. "How are you?" she asked into the phone. "Fine," Ray replied. "Did you get my letter?" Martha nodded. She knew what he wanted to talk about. "Ray, she's a grown woman. We can't control her choices." "Choices?" Ray's voice became harsh. "She's selling herself, Martha. Our daughter is a whore." Several inmates at nearby tables turned around. Martha grimaced. "Don't yell, and don't call her that." "What else would you call what she's doing?" Ray slammed his fist on the table. "I raised her to be a decent woman, not a—" "You raised her until you decided to rob a gas station," Martha interrupted. "After that, she was on her own." Ray fell silent. It was the truth he didn't want to admit. When he was arrested, Haley lost her job at the beauty salon. The owner didn't want to keep a criminal's daughter. Her boyfriend, a teacher, also disappeared from her life. The girl was left alone, with no money and no support. "She says she's making good money," Martha continued. "She rents an apartment in a nice neighborhood and buys nice clothes. Maybe we should just accept it." "Never," Ray interrupted. "I'd rather die than accept that." Martha sighed. "Ray, you only have 2 more years to serve. Maybe when you get out." 2 years, Ray repeated. "And in the meantime, she'll keep doing this." They were silent. Martha looked at her ex-husband and saw something frightening in his eyes. She knew that look. It was the same look he had before the robbery, when he decided there was no other way out. "Promise me you won't do anything stupid." she said quietly. Ray didn't answer. He looked at her through the thick glass and thought about how some things were more important than his own safety. Family honor, dignity, doing the right thing, all of that mattered. "Time's up," the guard announced. Martha stood up without waiting for a promise. She knew her ex-husband well enough to understand that he had already made up his mind. That evening, when the lights were turned off in the cells, Ray lay on his bunk and made plans. He had been studying the prison routine for 3 years and knew all the weak points in the security system. Night guard shifts, patrol routes, blind spots in the CCTV cameras. A plan began to form in his head. While working in the laundry, he had access to the basement where the old steam tunnels were located. Some of them led to the outer wall of the prison. All he needed was the right moment and the right tool. Tommy snored on the bunk next to him, unaware that his cellmate was planning an escape. Ray stared at the ceiling and thought about his daughter. He imagined her in an expensive dress, entering a hotel with another client. The thought made him so angry that he clenched his fists until they hurt. "I'll fix this," he whispered in the darkness. "I'll fix everything." Over the next few days, Ray carefully studied his options. He noticed that on Thursday evenings, Guard Johnson often fell asleep at his post. The camera in the East Corridor had been broken for a week, and no one was in a hurry to fix it. In the laundry room, he found an old wrench hidden behind the washing machine, probably left behind by one of the workers. Everything was falling into place. It was as if fate itself was helping him escape. Ray knew he would only have one chance. If he got caught, they would add years to his sentence, and he would never be able to get to Haley. But if he succeeded, he imagined their meeting. Haley would open the door to her apartment, see her father, and realize that the game was over. He would make her quit that dirty job and return to a normal life. And if she refused? Ray didn't allow himself to think about what might happen if she refused, but deep down, he knew the answer. Better a dead daughter than a disgrace to the family. "Flores, are you okay?" Tommy asked one morning, noticing the strange expression on his cellmate's face. "Everything's fine," Ray replied. "Couldn't be better." There were 3 days left until the escape. Haley Flores woke up in her apartment on the 12th floor of an apartment complex in downtown Parma to the sound of morning rain. Raindrops tapped against the panoramic windows overlooking the busy street. She stretched in bed, feeling pleasantly tired after the previous evening. The client had been generous and polite, which was not always the case. The studio apartment was tastefully furnished: a leather sofa, a glass coffee table, and a modern kitchen with granite countertops. It all cost a lot of money, but Haley could afford it. In 5 years in this business, she had learned to save and invest. She had a separate account where she put money aside for the future. Someday, she planned to open her own beauty salon. The phone rang as she was making coffee. It was Sasha, her best friend and colleague. "Hey, gorgeous. How's it going? I saw you at the Grand Plaza yesterday with that businessman." "Fine," Haley replied, looking at the rain outside the window. "Just a regular client. Pays well, doesn't ask for anything weird." "You're lucky. I got some crazy guy yesterday. I had to leave early." Haley grimaced. She knew that their work involved risks, but she tried not to think about it. She had a strict system for selecting clients, never met strangers, and always told Sasha where she would be. "Listen, are you free tonight? I want to try a new restaurant in the business district." "Sorry, I have a client. How about tomorrow?" "Sure. Take care, Haley." After the conversation, Haley sat for a long time with a cup of coffee, thinking about her life. 5 years ago, she worked at a beauty salon, dated a teacher named Michael, and planned to get married. Everything changed in one day when her father was arrested. First, she lost her job. Then Michael decided he didn't want to be associated with the daughter of a criminal. Her mother worked as a waitress and was barely making ends meet. Then Haley met Sasha, who offered her an easy way to make money. The first time was scary and humiliating, but the money was real. Gradually, she got used to it. learned to separate her work from her personal life, and created an image of a successful girl for herself. She never told her mother the details of her work, only that she worked in the entertainment industry. She wrote a letter to her father a year ago, hoping for understanding, but received no reply. Around noon, Haley went to the gym. She kept herself in excellent shape. It was part of her job. At the gym, she met David, her trainer, who always flirted with her. "How's it going, beautiful? Ready to sweat today?" "Always ready," Haley smiled. David didn't know what she did for a living. He thought she worked at an advertising agency. Sometimes Haley wanted to tell him the truth, but she knew it would ruin their friendship. After training, she stopped by the cafe where her mother worked. Daybreak was located in an old neighborhood of Parma, far from the glitz of the city center. The clientele here was simple: workers, retirees, students. Marta Flores had been working here for 3 years, from morning until late at night. "Haley, what a surprise!" Marta exclaimed happily when she saw her daughter. "Sit down. I'll get you a coffee." Haley sat down at a table by the window and watched her mother. Marta looked tired but dignified. At 50, she was still an attractive woman, but life had left its mark on her. "How's work?" Martha asked, sitting down next to her daughter. "Fine. I got a bonus this week." "That's wonderful, dear. I'm glad things are working out for you." Haley felt a pang of guilt. Her mother sincerely believed her lie, rejoiced in her success, unaware of the truth. Sometimes Haley wanted to confess, but she knew it would break her mother's heart. "Mom, how's Dad? Did you visit him recently?" Martha's face darkened. "I was there last week. He didn't look very well. Angry, tense. He asked about you." "What exactly?" "About your job. I told him you were doing well, that you were making good money." Haley felt a chill. "Did he say anything?" "Nothing specific. I just know that look. He's up to something." Mother and daughter sat in silence. They both knew that Ray wasn't the kind of man to simply accept his circumstances. He had always been principled and firm in his convictions. "Maybe I should go see him," Haley suggested. "I don't know. Maybe it's better not to for now." That evening, Haley was getting ready for a meeting with a client. She chose a black dress, did her makeup, and styled her hair. A beautiful, confident woman looked back at her in the mirror. No one would have guessed that she felt empty and lonely inside. The client was waiting at the bar of the Ritz Hotel. He was a middle-aged man, the owner of a chain of car dealerships, married but preferring to spend his time with young women. He was one of her regular clients, polite, generous, with no unusual requests. "Haley, you look stunning," he said, standing up when she entered. "Thank you, Richard. How are you?" They spent the evening in his room, discussing business, life, and plans for the future. To an outside observer, they could have been a couple enjoying a romantic evening. Haley had learned to play the part perfectly. Meanwhile, in another part of town, Detective Tom Davis was finishing his shift at the police station. A tall man of 45 with graying temples and tired eyes, he had been with the police for 20 years. Divorced 5 years ago with no children, he lived alone in a small apartment. Today had been relatively quiet. A couple of thefts, a domestic dispute, a minor accident. The usual routine of a big city. Davis was reviewing the reports when a new folder landed on his desk. "Tom, we have an alert from the state prison," said his partner, Sergeant Green. "One of the inmates may be planning an escape." "Who?" "Ray Flores. He's in for armed robbery." The guards noticed some suspicious behavior. Davis opened the folder and studied the photo. A middle-aged man with harsh features and cold eyes. The file indicated that he had a family in Parma, an ex-wife and daughter. "What kind of suspicious behavior?" "He spends too much time in the laundry room studying the guard's schedule. His cellmate says he's been acting strange for the past few weeks." "I see. If he escapes, he'll probably head here. We need to warn his family." "I've already sent a patrol to his ex-wife. She works at a cafe on Main Street." Davis nodded. He had seen many fugitives in his career. Most of them were stupid and got caught within days, but some were smart and dangerous. At the Daybreak Cafe, the police found Martha at work. She turned pale when she saw the uniform. "Mrs. Flores, we'd like to talk to you." "What's wrong? Is something wrong with Ray? He may be planning to escape. We want to warn you and your daughter." Martha sank into a chair. "I knew he was up to something. When I visited him last week, he seemed strange." "Where is your daughter now?" "I don't know. She lives separately and works at an advertising agency. We need her address and phone number." Martha gave them Haley's contact information, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She knew her ex-husband better than anyone. If he had decided to run, he had a good reason. "Officer, what might he do if he runs?" "It's hard to say. Usually fugitives try to hide or contact their family. We'll provide you with protection." "What if he wants to hurt someone?" The police officer looked at her intently. "Is there any reason to be concerned?" Martha hesitated. She couldn't tell him the truth about her daughter's work, but she knew that Ray could be dangerous. He's a very principled man. If something doesn't go the way he thinks it should, he can be very harsh. "We'll keep an eye on you and your daughter. If you notice anything suspicious, call us right away." After the police left, Martha sat in the empty cafe for a long time, thinking about her husband and daughter. The two most important people in her life were both hiding the truth from her. Ray was planning something dangerous, and Haley was lying about her job. She picked up her phone and dialed her daughter's number. "Haley, it's Mom. We need to talk." "Mom? What's wrong?" "Come to my house right now." There was such alarm in Martha's voice that Haley knew something was seriously wrong. She apologized to her client, quickly got dressed, and drove to her mother's house. Martha lived in a small apartment on the outskirts of town. When Haley arrived, her mother was pale and agitated. "Mom, what's going on?" "The police were here today. They think your father is planning to escape." Haley felt her heart race. "Escape? But why?" "I don't know, but I know my ex-husband. If he's decided to run, he has a destination." Mother and daughter looked at each other, both knowing what that destination might be. Haley thought about the letter she had sent her father a year ago. Maybe it had been a mistake. "Mom, what if he finds out about my job?" "What job? You work at an advertising agency." Haley took a deep breath. It was time to confess. "Mom, I don't work at an advertising agency. I work as an escort." Martha froze. "What?" "I date men for money. Not on the street, not like a cheap prostitute. I have regular clients, rich people. I make good money." Martha's face turned white as a sheet. "My God, Haley, why didn't you tell me?" "Because I knew how you would react. But I had no choice, Mom. After Dad was arrested, I lost my job. Michael dumped me. I had to make a living somehow." "And your father knows about this?" "I wrote him a letter. I wanted him to understand." Martha covered her face with her hands. "Oh my God. If he runs away." "What? What can he do?" "He might try to stop you. At any cost." Haley felt a chill in her chest. She knew her father. She knew his principles and beliefs. Family honor was everything to him. "Mom, do you think he'll hurt me?" "I don't know, but we have to be prepared for the worst." Thursday, 11:45 p.m. The Ohio State Prison was enveloped in the silence of the night. Ray Flores lay on his bunk, listening to Tommy's steady breathing. His cellmate had been asleep for an hour, and his snoring was getting louder. That was a good sign. Tommy always slept soundly. Ray quietly got up and went to the window. The moon was hidden behind clouds, and darkness reigned in the prison yard. Searchlights scanned the area every 30 seconds, but there were dark gaps between them. He had studied this pattern for weeks. In the pocket of his prison uniform was a wrench he had hidden after working in the laundry. It was small but sturdy enough to break a lock or deliver a blow. Ray clenched it in his hand, feeling the cold metal. Not today, he whispered to himself. He heard footsteps in the hallway. Ray quickly returned to his bunk and pretended to be asleep. It was guard Johnson making his rounds. Heavy footsteps stopped at their cell. The beam of a flashlight swept across the walls, then continued on its way. Ray waited until the footsteps faded away, then stood up again. He figured the next check would be in 2 hours. Johnson was lazy and often skipped his rounds, especially on Thursdays, the day before the weekend. The ventilation grate in the corner of the cell was old and loosely secured. Ray had been working on it for weeks, carefully loosening the bolts. Now it was held in place by only one fastener. He inserted a wrench and turned it. The metal gave way with a dull click. Tommy rolled over in his sleep, muttering something unintelligible. Ray froze, but his cellmate continued to sleep. A minute later, he went back to work. The ventilation shaft was narrow, but Ray had lost weight during his years in prison and was able to squeeze through. He climbed inside and began crawling through the metal tunnel. In complete darkness, he moved by touch, orienting himself by sounds and air currents. The plan was simple. The ventilation connected to steam tunnels under the building. From there, he could reach the old sewer system, which extended beyond the prison walls. Ray had studied all the diagrams while working in the laundry. 20 minutes later, he reached a fork. The left tunnel led to the basement, the right to the outer wall. Ray chose the left and continued on his way. It was even narrower here, and he could barely squeeze through. Finally, he felt a movement of air below him. That meant there was an open space beneath him. Ray found a grate and carefully knocked it out. Below him was a black hole, a steam tunnel. He jumped down and found himself in a wide underground corridor. Heating and water pipes ran through it. The air was hot and humid, smelling of metal and dampness. Ray turned on the small flashlight he had stolen from the storeroom. The tunnel stretched out in both directions. Ray went to the right, where he calculated the outer wall should be. He had been walking for half an hour when he heard the sound of dripping water. It was a sewer. The transition to the sewer system was disgusting. Ray waded knee-deep in dirty water, breathing through his mouth to avoid the smell. But this was the path to freedom. An hour later, he saw a faint light ahead. It was the grate of a sewer manhole. Ray climbed the rusty ladder and carefully lifted the cover. Above him was a starry sky. He was in an industrial area 2 miles from the prison. Abandoned warehouses and factories stood around him. Ray climbed out of the manhole and finally breathed deeply. Freedom. But this was only the beginning. He had to get to Parma, find his daughter, and do what should have been done long ago. At 6 a.m., Guard Johnson discovered the empty cell. Tommy woke up to the noise and didn't immediately realize what had happened. Ray's bunk was empty, and there was a hole in the corner where the ventilation grate had been removed. "Damn it!" Johnson shouted and pressed the alarm button. The prison erupted with activity. The inmates were herded back into their cells and a thorough search began. The administration called the state police and the FBI. Ray Flores was officially listed as a fugitive. Detective Tom Davis received a call at 7 a.m. He was at home making coffee and reading the morning news. "Davis here. Tom, this is Green. We have a problem. Ray Flores has escaped from prison." When? He was discovered an hour ago. He most likely escaped during the night. Damn. I'm on my way to the station. Davis quickly got dressed and drove to work. The station was already in chaos. A fresh report on the escape and a photo of Ray were waiting for him on his desk. "What do we know?" he asked Green. "He escaped through the ventilation system into the steam tunnels. It's a very well thought out plan. This guy is no fool." "Where could he be?" "Most likely heading for Parma. He has family there." "Have we notified them?" "A patrol car is on its way to his ex-wife's house. They haven't found his daughter yet." Davis grabbed his car keys. "I'll go to Martha Flores' house myself. We need to find out where his daughter might be." Meanwhile, Ray was walking along a deserted road toward Parma. He stole some clothes from a clothesline at one of the houses, old jeans and a shirt. He hid his prison uniform in a ditch by the road. Now he looked like an ordinary worker. It took about 4 hours to walk to Parma. Ray didn't want to risk getting into a passing car. His description could already have been broadcast on the radio. Better to walk and remain unnoticed. He thought about his daughter. Haley was sleeping in her expensive apartment, bought with money from selling her body. She thought she could live like this forever, that no one would stop her. But she was wrong. Ray imagined their meeting. He would make her understand that she was not only ruining her own life, but also the honor of their family. Every time she went with a man, she disgraced the Flores name. It had to stop. By noon, he had reached the outskirts of Parma. The city was large and densely populated, easy to get lost in the crowd. Ray knew where Marta lived, in an old neighborhood, in a rented apartment. But going there was risky. The police were probably already watching her. His daughter lived in the center, in the Park View residential complex. Ray knew the address from letters that sometimes came to the prison. Haley never wrote to him, but Martha mentioned where her daughter lived. He found an internet cafe and got an hour of internet time for $5. He quickly found information about the residential complex, photos, floor plans, security system. 12th floor, apartment 1247. Ray was studying the building plan when he heard the news on the radio. Police are searching for Ray Flores, who escaped from an Ohio state prison. The man is considered extremely dangerous. If you have seen him, please contact the police immediately. Some of the cafe's patrons turned toward the radio. Ray lowered his head and continued working on his computer. He had to act quickly. At that moment, Haley woke up in her apartment. She had slept poorly after her conversation with her mother. It had been difficult for her to confess about her job, but she felt relieved. Now, there were no secrets between them. The phone rang around noon. It was an unfamiliar number. Haley Flores? Yes, that's me. This is Detective Davis from the Parma Police Department. We need to meet with you. About what? Your father escaped from prison this morning. We believe he may be dangerous. Haley felt her heart freeze. Escaped? But why? That's what we're trying to find out. Can you come to the station? Yes, of course. I'll be right there. Haley quickly got dressed and drove to the police station. Detective Davis was a tall man with tired eyes. He showed her into his office and offered her some coffee. Miss Flores, when was the last time you spoke to your father? I wrote him a letter about a year ago. I never got a reply. What was the letter about? Haley hesitated. About my job. I wanted him to understand my choice. What kind of work do you mean? I work as an escort. Davis raised his eyebrows. I see. And you think your father might have reacted badly to that information? Possibly. He's a very principled man. Miss Flores, we believe your father may try to contact you or harm you. We can provide protection. Do you think he could be dangerous? A man who plans an elaborate prison escape usually has serious motives. Where do you plan to stay? At my mother's, I guess. Okay, we'll keep an eye on both of you. Meanwhile, Ray studied the apartment complex from the outside. The building was modern, with a concierge in the lobby and a video surveillance system. There was no way to get inside without a key. He watched the entrance for several hours, studying the rhythm of the building. Residents returned from work, couriers delivered food, and occasionally guests arrived. Around 6 in the evening, he saw his opportunity. A young woman with a child was leaving the building with a stroller. She was struggling to open the heavy door. Ray approached and helped her. Thank you, she said with a smile. You're welcome. What a beautiful baby. While the door was open, Ray quickly slipped inside. The woman didn't notice. She was busy with the stroller. The lobby was empty. The concierge had gone about his business. Ray climbed to the 12th floor, avoiding the elevator with its camera. The hallway was quiet. Most of the residents had not yet returned from work. Apartment 1247 was at the end of the hallway. Ray put his ear to the door. It was quiet inside. He took out a wrench and carefully worked on the lock. The door opened after a few minutes. The apartment was empty. Ray looked around. Expensive furniture, a large TV, panoramic windows. All of it had been bought with money from prostitution. He felt a surge of rage. In the bedroom, he found a wardrobe full of expensive dresses and lingerie. On the dressing table lay jewelry, cosmetics, and perfume. The life of a prostitute in all its glory. Ray sat down in a chair opposite the door and waited. Haley should be home soon. Then they could finally talk. At the police station, Davis received a call from a patrol car watching the building. "Detective, something's wrong at the apartment complex. The concierge says he saw a suspicious man around 6 o'clock. Description: middle-aged, dark hair, jeans, and a shirt. He was helping a woman with a stroller." "That could be him. Where is Haley Flores now?" "She's with her mother at a cafe on Main Street." "Okay. Don't let anyone into the building. I'm on my way." Davis grabbed his gun and headed for the apartment complex. If Ray had indeed entered the building, the situation could become critical. At the Daybreak Cafe, Haley and Martha sat at a table in the corner. They were both tense, every sound making them turn around. "Mom, what if he really wants to hurt me?" "I don't know, honey. Your father is capable of a lot when he thinks he's doing the right thing. But I'm his daughter. He can't. Family honor is everything to him. If he thinks you're bringing shame on our name." Martha didn't finish her sentence, but both knew what she meant. Ray could be dangerous, even to his own daughter. "Maybe I should leave town." "Where would you go? Do you have money ID?" "Yes, I have some savings. I can go to Sasha's in Cleveland." "That's a good idea. But first we need to get your things from the apartment." Haley nodded. She couldn't just disappear without taking the bare necessities. Her documents, money, clothes, everything was in the apartment. "I'll go with you," said Martha. "Mom, it could be dangerous." "That's exactly why I won't let you go alone." They finished their coffee and headed for the exit. A police patrol car followed them at a distance. Haley felt like a hunted animal. When they pulled up to the apartment complex, they saw several police cars. Detective Davis was standing at the entrance talking to the concierge. "What's going on?" Haley asked as she approached him. "We think your father may be in the building. Don't go in there." "But I need to get my things. It's too dangerous. We'll check the building first." Haley looked up at the windows of her apartment on the 12th floor. Somewhere in there could be her father, the man who had once read her bedtime stories and now might want to kill her. "Detective, what if he's really in there?" "We'll try to take him alive. But if he resists?" Davis didn't finish his sentence, but Haley understood. Her father might not survive the night. In the apartment, Ray looked out the window at the police cars below. He knew they had found him, but it didn't matter. The important thing was that Haley would be home soon, and then everything would be resolved. He clenched the wrench in his hand and prepared to wait. Ray Flores sat in a chair opposite the front door, clutching the wrench in his hands. It was getting dark outside, and the red and blue lights of police cars were flashing below. He knew they had found him, but it didn't matter anymore. All he needed to do was wait for Haley. The sound of a key in the lock made him tense. The door slowly opened, and a young woman entered the apartment. Even in the dim evening light, Ray recognized his daughter immediately. Haley had grown up and become more beautiful, but he remembered every feature of her face. "Hello, Haley," he said quietly, remaining seated. Haley froze in the doorway, dropping her purse. Her face paled, and her eyes widened in shock. "Dad, how are you? I escaped this morning. I did it so I could see you." Haley slowly closed the door behind her, her eyes fixed on her father. He looked older, thinner, but his gaze was as piercing as she remembered. There was something in his eyes that made her feel afraid. "Dad, the police are looking for you. You need to turn yourself in." "The police?" Ray sneered. "I don't care about the police. I care about what my daughter is doing." Haley took a step back. "What are you talking about?" "You know what I'm talking about." Ray slowly rose from his chair. I got your letter, Haley. The one where you tell me about your new job. Dad, I can explain everything. Explain? Ray's voice grew louder. What can you explain? How did my daughter become a whore? The word hit Haley like a slap in the face. I'm not a whore. I'm an escort. It's completely different. Different? Ray took a step toward her. You're selling your body for money. What do you call that? It's a job. I'm not robbing anyone. I'm not mugging gas stations. The mention of robbery caused a flash of anger to flare in Ray's eyes. I robbed a gas station to feed our family, and you're disgracing our name for expensive clothes. Haley backed away further, feeling her back touch the wall. Dad, please listen to me. After you were arrested, I lost my job. Michael left me. I had no choice. No choice? Ray stepped closer. There's always a choice. You could have worked in a store, a restaurant, anywhere, but you chose the easy way out. Easy? Haley felt anger rising inside her. You think it's easy? Smiling at men who disgust you, pretending you like it? Then why do you do it? Because I make more in a month than my mom makes in a year at that cafe. Because I want to live with dignity, not count every penny. Ray stopped 2 steps away from his daughter. There was so much pain and rage in his eyes that Haley felt her legs buckle. Dignity? He whispered. You call this a dignified life? Yes, at least I'm not killing anyone. You do, Ray said quietly. You kill me every day. You're killing our family, our name. Haley saw tears in her father's eyes and felt her own eyes well up. Dad, I didn't mean to upset you. I just wanted to survive. Survive, Ray repeated. What will be left of you when you're old? What will you tell your children? I won't have children. Why not? Because what kind of normal man would want to marry someone like me? Ray looked at his daughter and saw the pain in her eyes. The pain she hid behind expensive clothes and makeup. The pain he had helped create with his arrest. Haley, he said more softly, it's not too late. You can quit. We can start over. How? You have 2 more years in prison. Mom has no money. What am I supposed to do? Anything but that. Dad, you don't understand. I'm not the girl you remember. I've changed. No, Ray shook his head. You're still my daughter. You're just lost. Haley began to cry. I missed you so much, Dad. I thought about you every day. And I thought about you. That's why I'm here. They stood facing each other, separated by a chasm of pain and misunderstanding. Ray saw in his daughter the little girl he had taught to ride a bike. Haley saw in her father the man who had once been her hero. Dad, what are we going to do? Ray took a deep breath. You're going to quit your job. Today. And then what? Then we'll figure something out. Together. What about the police? The police can wait. Haley wiped away her tears. Okay, I'll quit, but I need time to sort things out. How much time? A week. I have a few regular clients. I have to tell them. Clients? Ray's voice became harsh again. You're still thinking about clients? Dad, it's not that simple. It's very simple, Ray shouted. You're going to call those bastards right now and tell them you're not working anymore. I can't just drop everything. You can, and you will. Haley felt fear rising in her chest again. Her father was furious, and she knew that in this state he could be dangerous. Dad, please calm down. I won't calm down. I spent 3 years in prison thinking about you, imagining you living an honest life, meeting a nice guy, getting married, and you're selling yourself. I'm doing what I have to do to survive. No, you're doing what's easiest. Ray grabbed his daughter by the shoulders and shook her. Look at yourself. Expensive dress, jewelry, all this luxury, bought with money from prostitution. Let me go. Haley tried to break free. I won't let you, not until you understand. What do I have to understand? That you're killing us all. Me, Mom, yourself. Haley broke free from her father's grip and ran to the window. You want the truth? Fine. Yes, I work as an escort. Yes, I sleep with men for money. And you know what? I don't like it. Every time I do it, I feel dirty and used. But it's the only way I can live a normal life." "Normal?" Ray slowly approached her. "You call this a normal life?" "Better than counting every penny like my mother. Better than living in fear that there will be nothing to eat tomorrow. Better to be a whore than poor." "Yes!" Haley shouted. "Yes, better!" Ray froze. At that moment, he realized he had lost his daughter forever. The girl he had raised was gone. In her place stood a stranger who had chosen money over dignity. "Then I don't know you anymore," he said quietly. "Great, because I don't know you either. My father would never rob a gas station." Those words hit Ray harder than a physical blow. He clenched the wrench in his hand so tightly that his knuckles turned white. "I did it for the family." "No, you did it because you're a coward. Instead of finding an honest job, you decided it was easier to steal." "Shut up." "Why? Don't you like the truth? You condemn me, but you yourself—" "Shut up! You're the criminal, a thief, a loser!" Ray couldn't take it anymore. He lunged at his daughter, raising the wrench. Haley saw death in his eyes and tried to run away, but it was too late. The blow landed on her temple. Haley fell, hitting her head on the glass coffee table. The sound of breaking glass mixed with the dull thud of her falling body. Ray stood over his daughter, breathing heavily. The wrench fell from his hands and clattered to the floor. Haley lay motionless, blood flowing from the wound on her head. "Haley," he whispered. "Haley!" He knelt down and touched her neck, searching for a pulse. Nothing. His daughter's eyes stared at the ceiling, seeing nothing. "No," Ray whispered. "No, no, no." He lifted his daughter's head, trying to find signs of life, but Haley was dead. Her beautiful face was pale, and blood soaked the expensive carpet. Ray sat down on the floor next to his daughter's body and cried. He didn't want this. He just wanted to talk some sense into her, to make her quit that job. But she wouldn't listen, kept saying terrible things. He heard voices outside the door. The police were coming up to the 12th floor. Ray knew that in a few minutes, he would be arrested. But it didn't matter anymore. He had killed the only person worth living for. He took his daughter's face in his hands and kissed her forehead. "I'm sorry, baby. I'm sorry, Daddy." The door flew open. Police officers in bulletproof vests burst into the apartment, pointing their guns at Ray. "Hands up! Don't move!" Ray slowly raised his hands, never taking his eyes off his daughter's face. "I didn't want to," he whispered. "I didn't want to." Detective Davis entered the apartment and saw the scene. Haley Flores lay in a pool of blood, and her father sat next to her with a bloody wrench. "Call an ambulance," Davis said, even though he knew it was too late. Ray was handcuffed and pulled to his feet. He didn't resist, just stared at his daughter. "Ray Flores, you're under arrest on suspicion of murder. You have the right to remain silent." But Ray couldn't hear the detective's words anymore. He thought about the little girl who once called him the best dad in the world. Now that girl was gone, and it was his fault. As he was being led out of the apartment, Ray saw Martha in the hallway. His ex-wife was standing against the wall, pale as a ghost, staring at him in horror. "What have you done?" she whispered. Ray didn't answer. What could he say? That he wanted to save his daughter but killed her instead? That love had driven him to murder? They took him away, and Martha remained in the hallway, trying to comprehend that her only daughter was dead at the hands of her own father. Forensic investigators were working in the apartment, photographing the crime scene. Haley's body was covered with a white sheet. Her beautiful life had ended at the age of 28 from a blow with a wrench. Detective Davis looked at the blood-stained carpet and thought about how family love could turn into hatred. Ray Flores loved his daughter so much that he killed her when she didn't live up to his expectations. "Detective, we found this in the suspect's pocket. said one of the officers, handing him a letter. Davis unfolded the paper and read Haley's handwriting. "Dad, I know you don't approve of my choice, but this is my life. I make more in a week than Mom does in a month at that cafe. Please don't judge me, your daughter Haley." This letter was the reason for the escape and murder. A few lines written by a daughter trying to explain her choice. Lines that her father understood as betrayal. Davis folded the letter and looked at the bloodstain. Another family destroyed. Another life cut short. All because of an inability to understand and forgive. Ray sat silently in the police car, staring out the window. He thought about what he would say to Martha when she came to visit him in prison. How would he explain that he had killed their daughter while trying to save her? But Martha would never come to see him again. Some things cannot be forgiven, not even by a mother, not even by an ex-wife. Ray closed his eyes and remembered Haley as a little girl. She laughed, ran around the house, called him the best dad in the world. Now that Dad was her killer, the wheels of the police car clattered on the asphalt, taking Ray Flores away from the scene of the crime. Behind him were the apartment with bloodstains, his crying mother, and his shattered dreams of family happiness. The story ended as it had to end. A father who loved too much and judged too harshly killed the daughter he was trying to save, and now there was no salvation for either of them. 6 months after the murder, the Parma County courtroom was packed. Journalists, curious citizens, and a few acquaintances of the Flores family came to see the end of the tragic story. In the front row sat Martha, who had aged 10 years in 6 months. Next to her was Sasha, Haley's best friend, who still couldn't believe what had happened. Ray Flores sat at the defense table in an orange prison uniform. His hands were shackled, and his face showed complete indifference to what was happening. The court-appointed lawyer tried several times to talk to him, but Ray responded with monosyllables or remained silent. "All rise, the court is in session," announced the bailiff. Judge Roberts, an elderly man with a gray beard, took his seat. He had been handling difficult cases for 30 years, but this story shocked even him, a father who killed his own daughter because of moral differences. "The state of Ohio versus Ray Flores, charged with first-degree murder," read the court clerk. The prosecutor, a young woman named Jennifer Clark, stood up to deliver her opening statement. "Your Honor, members of the jury, this is a case about a man who decided he had the right to take his daughter's life. Ray Flores didn't just kill Haley Flores, he executed her for a lifestyle he believed was wrong." Martha clenched her hands into fists. Every word hurt, but she had to be there. For Haley. The evidence will show that the defendant planned an elaborate escape from prison with one goal in mind: to get to his daughter. Not to hug her, not to ask for forgiveness for his mistakes, but to punish her for a choice he couldn't accept. Defense attorney Michael Stone was an experienced lawyer, but this case seemed hopeless. His client had practically admitted his guilt and refused to cooperate in preparing a defense. Detective Davis was the first witness for the prosecution. He gave a detailed account of the investigation into the escape, the discovery of the body, and Ray's arrest. "Detective, describe the defendant's condition at the time of his arrest," the prosecutor asked. "He was sitting next to his daughter's body, holding her head in his hands. He kept repeating, 'I didn't want to, I didn't want to.' He did not resist arrest." "Was the murder weapon found at the scene?" "Yes, a wrench with the defendant's fingerprints and the victim's blood on it." The defense attorney tried to find flaws in the testimony, but the facts were irrefutable. Ray Flores had killed his daughter, and no one could deny it. The next witness was Martha. It was difficult for her to speak, but she knew she had to tell the truth about her family. "Mrs. Flores, tell the court about your ex-husband's character," the prosecutor asked. "Ray was always a man of principle," Martha said in a quiet voice. "He had a clear line between right and wrong. Compromise was difficult for him. How did he feel about his daughter? He loved Haley more than life itself, but it was a demanding love. He wanted her to live up to his idea of what a daughter should be. Did he know about Haley's work?" Martha nodded. wiping away tears. Haley wrote him a letter a year ago. She hoped he would understand, but he never replied. During cross-examination, the defense attorney tried to portray Ray as a loving father who had been driven to despair. "Mrs. Flores, is it true that your ex-husband was upset about how his life had turned out after his arrest?" "Yes." "Did he blame himself for what happened to his daughter?" "I think so." "And could those feelings of guilt have led him to a nervous breakdown?" The prosecutor objected. "Your Honor, that's a leading question." Objection sustained. Sasha talked about the last months of Haley's life, about her plans to quit her job as an escort and open a beauty salon. "She wasn't happy," Sasha said. "She was working just to save money for the future." When it was time for the defense, the lawyer called the prison psychologist who had examined Ray after his arrest. "Dr. Miller, what is your conclusion regarding the defendant's mental state?" "Mr. Flores suffers from deep depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. The murder of his daughter was a catastrophe that he cannot accept." "Was he capable of understanding his actions at the time of the crime?" "That's a difficult question. He understood what he was doing, but his judgment was clouded by his emotional state." During cross-examination, the prosecutor dismantled the attempt to portray the murder as the result of temporary insanity. "Doctor, the defendant had been planning his escape for several weeks, correct?" "Yes." "Does that require clear thinking and the ability to plan?" "Yes." "So he was capable of controlling his actions?" The psychologist hesitated. "To a certain extent, yes." The trial culminated in Ray's own testimony. The defense attorney had long urged him to testify, and Ray finally agreed. He slowly rose to the witness stand, looking much older than his 52 years. The courtroom fell silent. "Mr. Flores, tell the court what happened at your daughter's apartment," the lawyer asked. Ray was silent for a long time, staring at his hands. Then he looked up and stared at Martha. "I wanted to save her," he said in a hoarse voice. "When I got that letter, I couldn't believe it. My little girl." He paused, trying to collect his thoughts. "What did you feel when you read your daughter's letter?" "Pain, shame. I thought it was my fault. If I hadn't gone to prison, this wouldn't have happened." "And what did you decide to do?" "To fix my mistake, to help her find the right path." "Tell me about your meeting with your daughter." Ray took a deep breath. "I tried to explain to her that she was doing the wrong thing, that she was bringing shame on our family, but she wouldn't listen." "What happened next?" "She said," Ray faltered. "She said terrible things. She called me a loser, a coward. She said she'd rather be a whore than poor." The courtroom grew even quieter. Martha covered her face with her hands. "And then you hit her?" "I don't remember exactly. All I remember is the rage. She wouldn't listen, she wouldn't understand. I just wanted her to shut up." The last words sounded like a scream. Ray stopped, realizing what he had said. The prosecutor stood up to cross-examine him. "Mr. Flores, did you plan to kill your daughter?" "No." "But you took a weapon with you? A wrench?" "It's not a weapon. I used it to escape." "But that's what you used to kill Haley?" Ray didn't answer. "Mr. Flores, your daughter was a grown woman who had the right to choose her own lifestyle?" "Not that one." "Who gave you the right to decide how she should live?" "I'm her father." "And that gives you the right to kill her?" "I didn't want to." "But you did. You killed your own daughter because you couldn't accept her choice." Ray fell silent. There was only emptiness in his eyes. During the closing arguments, the prosecutor emphasized the premeditated nature of Ray's actions, while the defense attorney asked for leniency, citing the defendant's emotional state. The jury reached a verdict after 4 hours of deliberation: guilty of second-degree murder. They did not believe in premeditation, but they also did not accept the argument of temporary insanity. The judge sentenced Ray Flores to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. After the sentence was announced, Martha approached her ex-husband. The guards allowed them to talk for a few minutes. "Ray," she said quietly. "Why?" He looked at her with cloudy eyes. "I loved her. Love doesn't kill. Mine did." Martha turned and walked away. She would never see Ray again. Some wounds never heal. Detective Davis watched the proceedings from the back rows. When it was over, he stepped outside and lit a cigarette. In his 20 years on the force, he had seen many family tragedies, but this one had touched him deeply. A father who loved his daughter so much that he killed her. A daughter who tried to survive in a cruel world by any means necessary. A mother who lost both her husband and her daughter in one day. There were no winners in this story, only victims and broken lives. Ray was taken back to prison. Now he would spend the rest of his life there, remembering the little girl who once called him the best dad in the world, the girl he killed with his own hands. Life went on in the city of Parma. People worked, loved, and dreamed. But in one family, there was no longer a father or a daughter, only the mother, who woke up every day thinking that she could have prevented the tragedy. The story of Ray and Haley Flores is a warning about how love can turn into hate, and the desire to protect can turn into the desire to destroy. It shows that sometimes the people closest to us can become our most dangerous enemies. Martha returned to work at the cafe. She needed a routine to keep her from going crazy with grief. Customers offered their condolences, but she preferred to remain silent. The pain was too personal to share with strangers. Sasha moved to another city. Parma reminded her of her friend, and those memories were unbearable. She found a new job and new friends, but she often thought about Haley and how things could have been different. Detective Davis continued his work. Other cases, other crimes, other family dramas. But the folder with photos of the crime scene lay in his desk, reminding him that love without acceptance can be deadly. In prison, Ray Flores sat in his cell and looked at a photo of little Haley, the only thing he was allowed to keep. In the photo, she was smiling, hugging her father. Back then, she trusted him unconditionally, considered him her hero. Now, he was her killer. And that was the only truth he would have to live with for the rest of his life.